Hello.
Yes.
This is the UFO show there?
Yes, ma'am. This is Fred Gale. You had a question or something?
Well, no. I was going to tell you about some sightings I'd seen.
Oh, well, good.
Two very close ones. And I'll tell you, before July 29th, if you had said too much about UFOs, I'd say, well, maybe. I'm sorry. Now I know they exist. The 29th of July, my daughter and I were up in Hampton Falls having coffee with a friend of mine. We started down the road about 11:30 to go home. And it's quite a dark road and woodsy. So there were bright red and white lights streaming to the middle of that road. And I said, well, we'll slow down. There's a car accident here. Well, we get up to where the lights were, and the white lights had gone off, but you could still see the red ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, gee, there's no cars here. Well, where are they? So we stopped. And I said, well, gee, where's the cars? I mean, where are the lights coming from? So Sherry was sitting on the other side of me, you know, and she looked outside, and she looked up. And she says, well, up there. I says, in the air? She says, well, look. So I had to lean over. And then there hovering about 8 to 10 feet off of the ground was this oval-shaped thing. Now, I could not see the body of it this time at all. It was just bright green lights streaming down on the sides, and there were red ones out, you know, onto the front. And they hit my car, the lights. And we sat there for perhaps 4 or 5 minutes, and the thing was rocking side to side. It had no noise. So, anyways, we were just discussing it, and she got scared, and she was almost in hysterics, and she locked the door, and we did roll the windows up. And she says, it's awful looking. I said, well, maybe it's a plane. She says, well, how come there's no noise? She says, it looks like something out of Phantasmic Features. And it's true, it did. It was very, very weird. So then it started rocking faster, and it went up a little. Then it looked like it was going to jump on my car, and it scared me, you know?
Mm.
So we took off, and I made a watch all the way home to see if the thing was anywhere near us. Well, when we came home, we stood out on the lawn, and at what I call a 45-degree angle, we saw this oval object, which was a silvery white, take off and go up into the sky and disappear. It had red, green, and white lights on it.
Mm-hmm.
Then we didn't think too much more about it, you know. And I didn't dare tell anybody. And finally, a couple of days later, it bothered me so much. I mean, I just couldn't believe that I'd seen the thing. I told my girlfriend about it. She asked me to call Pease Air Force, which I did. And I asked them about balloons and so on and so forth. And I know a few things about them because I've lived near the base here and I've lived near planes down in Massachusetts, you know. So I described it to them. And they told me that it was a UFO. And they had to translate that because I didn't know what that meant. It's flying saucer, they called it. So then in September the 16th, my girlfriend and I were out again, just around, you know, looking around. We had started seeing things that didn't look right. So we kept looking, you know, night after night. So anyway, the 16th, I guess it went into the 17th. It started up at a field here in Route 88 in Hampton Falls. And we saw 6 of these long red things. We don't know what they were. They were something we hadn't seen before. They fly below tree level. They had a uneven pattern. We saw 6 of those there. And then we saw, Chris, I don't know if people believe this or not, but stars can walk, and they're not really stars. Not all of them. I don't mean them all. And anyways, we saw all that there. So we took a ride down the road. And my girlfriend said to me, she says, you know, she says, there's 2 objects following us. And I told her, I said, well, you're foolish. I said, they don't follow. Things can't follow you. And I really didn't believe it, so we stopped the car. There were 2 objects, and they were large, and you might say that they were large stars, you know? So one kept going with us. The other one seemed to drag back. All right, we get down the corner of Ashbrook Road and this 88 Road, and this thing assumed a different shape. It looked long, with red in the front and red in the back and a little bit of orange. So that's all right. So we went down the street. We kept going. We stopped, and I mean, you have to see it to believe it. This thing stopped when we stopped. When we went fast, it went faster. When we went fast, it just went a little ahead of us, you know? Mm-hmm. All right, it followed us up and down roads. It made, when we turned, a U-turn in the street, which I did, it went across the, to the other side, my right, and it was way below tree level. It kept right up with us. So out on 101, Route 101, I stopped the car, and this thing was ahead of me. It went ahead of me. It stopped right in midair, and there was no noise to it. I stopped the car, and we got out underneath, right out of the car, on the ground there. And this thing turned and came back at an angle, and it went right over my car. All right, we got a very good view, and I had a camera, which I tried to get a picture of it. I didn't get it to come out. But this thing, to me, the front of it was oval-shaped. It had what I call either short wings or fins. I don't know what you want to call it. It was long-bodied. And it had, like, in the back, a split, like I call a fin, flat, though. Then underneath of this thing, there was what I call a cabinet or a carriage, whichever you please, and it had square windows in it, which were illuminated, but you couldn't see anything other than a light coming from it and what might have been a ceiling or something, you know? All right, this thing was a dull metal, and it's what I would call a Hammett effect. This thing was no more than 8 to 10 feet over our heads. And it was a dull metal. It had lights all over it, larger lights around the edges of it, you know? And it was red, green, and white, and orange lights on that thing. Now, I don't know what it is. We went to Pease Air Force again. We called. They asked us to come up. We did. And
these two gentlemen are all excited here. They'd love to.
I never believed this.
Well,
stuff.
they would love to sit down and talk to you about it. Could we get you to give your name to our directors? They could call you sometime.
Yes.
Would that be all right?
Very interested in this.
Well, they are quite interested. I can tell you that.
They're still around here. Believe me, I don't care. They are. There's over 100 people in this area have seen these things.
Uh-huh. Well, Steve, you any questions? Or?
Well, would you mind telling us what area that is?
This is Hampton Exeter area.
Hampton Exeter.
Now, if you remember, there were police and a boy that made the newspapers. I didn't want my name used, period, because, you know, people do think you're not quite right.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
I saw this. The first one I saw was July 29th, and I had reported it to Pease a couple of days later.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's certainly most interesting, and I wonder if it's the shape at all relates to what was seen and published, you know.
You mean the Exeter?
The one seen by Mr. Muscarol.
Oh, you mean, yeah, I know him. I know the boy. Well, the first one was, but I say that this thing can assume different shapes. I don't mean the metal can change. It absolutely cannot.
Yes.
But by changing the lights, it can look different. We've seen it quite large, right down the head of this street, and a whole bunch of kids have seen it, and neighbors. And I have a girlfriend that is a grown woman, too, and she's been out with me, and we have seen these things many times. The nearest were with Doris and I when it flew over my car, and when Sharon and I stopped by the side of the road, and they were very near.
Do you have any idea at all where this thing might have its home base, perhaps, in that area?
Don't you think I would love to know that? I mean, no, but I'm going to tell you. Well, I'll tell you, 88's field, I don't care. You can see these things many, many times, and you tell me, when you sit, I mean, you have to sort of study these things, you know? I mean, in the beginning, now, we'd seen other things after that July thing because it bothered me. I mean, I thought I'd lost my mind, really. And I just kept going out and going out. And finally, these things we've seen, it's amazing what they are. I have a daughter that sat with me and saw 3 so-called stars come right down and take a shape of, so that you could see metal on 2 of the craft, and the other one, the long red thing.
Madam, if you don't stop this, you're going to make a believer out of me.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. If you told me this before the 29th of July, I'd say all things are possible, but I want to see it first.
That's what I say.
That's exactly how I felt. But you show me what I saw and tell me where it comes from. And if you can give me a legitimate answer for it, I'll believe you.
Well, that's interesting. Would you hold on so you can give your name to our director, please?
Okay.
Thanks for the call.
All right.
Good night.